Hey y'all, we're the Dodettes. I'm Annie.
And I'm Sandy, and today we'll be discussing the events of World War I. So, you might be wondering, what was life like in the U.S. during the years we were involved in the World War I? Well, during those years, women were in factories to produce supplies needed in the war, and children were selling war bonds and planting victory gardens in support of the war. Finally, men between the ages 21 and 30 were put into a draft to help the amount of men needed to fight in the war for their country.
War Industries Board and Committee for Public Information was made to influence public opinion and known as CPI. This was an independent agency to gain support for the U.S. during World War I. This was established by Woodrow Wilson, the first large-scale propaganda agency. The goal was to make Americans a part of the war. It started in 1917 and decommissioned in 1919.
The Espionage Act was the act to control the insubordination of the American people. This act banned transferring information such as pictures, documents, or any information relating to national defenses with the intent to harm or use information to harm to the United States or advantages for the other nations passed on June 15, 1917. More than 2,000 people were charged under this act before it was repealed in 1920.
Go. The Sedition Act stated that it was illegal for American citizens to publish, print, or utter any false, scandalous, or malicious writing about the government, Constitution, the American uniform, and the flag. Doing so could be met with imprisonment of 5 to 20 years, financial penalties, and more. This was passed on May 18, 1918. More than 2,100 people were charged under this act.
Schenck versus U.S. was about a man charged under the Espionage Act for mailing printed information critical to the American draft. The defendant claimed that under the First Amendment this was a freedom of speech. However, it was ruled that this was not covered by the First Amendment due to the limitations of the First Amendment, March 3, 1919.
The Food Administration was set to assure that there was supply, distribution, and conservation of food. The Food Administration was set to ensure that there was enough food supplies for troops in the war. Things such as wheat, meat, sugar, and fats were asked to be reduced in consumption by Americans. Wilson established the U.S. Food Administration with an executive order on August 10, 1917.
Herbert Hoover served as the president during World War I, and he obtained political prominence during that war. He served roles such as chairman of the Committee for the Relief of Belgium and the U.S. Food Administration. After the war, Hoover served as the head of the American Relief Association. He then was appointed U.S. Secretary of Commerce and eventually was elected President of the United States.
The contributions made by American women are largely overlooked in World War I. During the war, while men were fighting, women filled manufacturing companies and agriculture positions, which were on the home front. Some other women also provided support on the front lines, such as nurses, doctors, ambulance drivers, and translators.
What methods did the government use to mobilize citizens to patriotism and civic duty? One method the government used to mobilize citizens was the use of propaganda posters. Through the posters, the government was invoking patriotism. Some posters would even speak to one gender and describe to them how they can help in the war and what their civic duty was. Another method the government used was censoring certain materials. Some materials included mail, news, and speeches. This was to prevent information from reaching the enemy. This made a large impact on the war, as the people of America were a big part of the resources of the war.
The Sedition Act stated that it was illegal for American citizens to publish, print, or utter any false, scandalous, or malicious writing about the government, Constitution, the American uniform, and the flag. Doing so could be met with imprisonment of 5 to 20 years, financial penalties, and more. This was passed on May 18, 1918. More than 2,100 people were charged under this act.
Schenck versus U.S. was about a man charged under the Espionage Act for mailing printed information critical to the American draft. The defendant claimed that under the First Amendment this was a freedom of speech. However, it was ruled that this was not covered by the First Amendment due to the limitations of the First Amendment, March 3, 1919.
Come on, buy more bonds. I can't speak for every woman, but I know that I can't just stand around here while my son, husbands, brothers, and cousins are out there in the trenches fighting for our country. But what can I do? I can't fight. You can buy Liberty bonds. Liberty bonds are a symbol of our patriotism and show our families that are out there fighting that we are here to support them.
Liberty bonds. Get yours today.
Propaganda on the home front. This poster reading, "I want you for the U.S. Army," was leading men to believe they're wanted for the Army because it's their civic duty to fight for their country.
This next poster is leading women to believe that they have a duty to expend their resources to help the war funds and help their sons, essentially. Finally, this poster is leading men to believe they are doing something wrong if they haven't enlisted, because even an animal has. Liberty bonds! According to the article Liberty Bonds, what they are, how they are, a Liberty Bond is a debt obligation issued by the U.S. Department of the Treasury in conjunction with the Federal Reserve. Also known as a Liberty Loan, it was a war bond issued by the four installments in 1917 to 1918 as a means to finance the U.S. participation in World War I and the Allied war effort in Europe. Liberty bonds were a program designed to bring money in from the Americans to the government to help pay for military resources. However, the public is ensured that after years, they will get their money back and with interest. So you might be wondering, how did the American Red Cross help the war effort? Well, the American Red Cross supported the Army's medical services and helped the civilian population. They brought relief to prisoners of war and helped the prisoners return to their home countries after the war. They were also responsible for the production of medical supplies, garments, comfort kits, and other items to benefit the American and Allied soldiers. Who created this? Claire Barton founded the American Cross on May 21, 1881. She served as the Red Cross president for 23 years and retired in 1904. Claire is one of the most honored women in American history. What role did the Salvation Army play in World War I? Donut Girls! The role of the Salvation Army during the war was to provide supplies and food for the soldiers. The Donut Girls made donuts daily for the soldiers fighting on the front line. They started with only 150 donuts on the first day, but by the end, they were making up 9,000 donuts a day at 42 different stations. The donuts were a small reminder to the soldiers of what they were fighting for, home and their families. Last take. Selective Service Act. Congress passed the Selective Service Act on May 18, 1917. It allowed the federal government to temporarily expand the military. This act later required all men ages 21 to 45 to register for military service.
War what?
World War One. I just gotta enunciate.
World War I. Say WWI.
WWI. It's I. It's one.
WW1.
WW1. So, you might be wondering, what was life like in the U.S. during the years the country was involved in the World War I? Well, during those years, the women...
Go. Come on, buy more bonds. I can't speak for every woman, but I know that I just can't stand here while my son, husband, brothers, and cousins are...
Action!
Come on, buy more bonds. I can't speak for every woman, but I know that I can't just stand around here while my son, husbands, brothers, and cousins are out in the trenches.
The Espionage Act was to control the import of America people. This act banned transferring information. Gosh dang it.
I think the rolling in.
One.
The Espionage Act was to control the insubordination of the American people. This act bans transferring information such as pictures, documents, or any information related to the national defense of the intent to harm or use of information to harm to the United States of advantages for the other nations, passed on June 15, 1917. More than 2,000 people were charged under this act before it was repealed in 1920.